Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS and in partnership with Vertical Valley Magazine. In this two-part series, guest co-host Terry Miyauchi and I talked to prior Japanese Coast Guard pilot Hajime Sagane.
Yeah, I saw a lot of bodies in the ocean. So next day of the earthquake, I was dispatched to the Kamaishi area, which is the Iwate prefecture, north side of the Fukushima, north side of Sendai. And then I saw a lot of debris on the ocean. First body was, it was like a Japanese elementary school student wearing the same backpack, having the same backpack. The girls, most of the case, girls are having a red backpack, and the boys a black backpack. And we found that backpack on the ocean.
Jimmy speaks excellent English, but for the best experience, we recommend watching this episode on our HeliCASTS YouTube page to enjoy the benefits of closed captioning. During our conversation, Jimmy recounts the historic and tragic events that unfolded after a 9.0 earthquake struck off the coast of Japan on March 11th of 2011. This devastating quake triggered a massive tsunami that claimed over 20,000 lives and critically damaged the Fukushima nuclear power plant's cooling system. Jimmy shares gripping first-hand accounts of the heroic efforts during Japan's 2011 earthquake and tsunami, including the challenges of search and rescue missions, the use of helicopters in cooling efforts, and the emotional weight of recovery work. Join us as we dive into a compelling conversation about resilience, preparedness, and the dedication of those who serve in public safety aviation. Thank you to our sponsors, SpectraLab, Dallas Avionics, and Onboard Systems Hoist and Winch.
Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS. The Hangar Z Podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
Hey, welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Gray, and we have a really impactful conversation lined up for today. One that a good friend, Terry Miyauchi, who you've all heard me talk about quite a bit over the course of all these podcasts, helped set up. He's actually here today with us to help co-host the conversation. So, Terry, thank you for co-hosting, and thank you for setting this conversation up.
Absolutely, John. Happy to be here.
It's not very often that we get to hang out, but when we do, it's great. We just had a chance to spend a couple days together at the SBSO San Bernardino County Sheriff's Fly-In, which was really good. Terry did a presentation there, and every time I get to sit through one of your presentations, I always walk away impacted. So thanks for that. And for this conversation, we've had to coordinate time zones. This is the first time actually for me coordinate a time zone in Japan. And again, this is a conversation that Terry helped establish. He's a guest, is a friend of Terry's. They work together. They've gotten to know each other through Bell. And I guess Jimmy has a lot of inside knowledge about things all related to Terry. So I'll be excited to hear some of the inside jokes you guys have over the course of this conversation. But Jimmy, if you could, can you just introduce yourself and give us your full name, and over the course of the conversation, I'll call you Jimmy so I don't butcher your real name.
I'm Hajime Sagane. That's my full name, but people call me Jimmy. And I work at the Bell Textron as a regional sales manager, and my responsibilities are covering all of Japan and visiting a Japanese customer and selling the aircraft. And my main customer is the Japanese Defense Force, and the Japan Coast Guard, and the firefighters, the Japanese police, and all of the commercial customers.
Yeah, very cool. You've got a lot of personal experience with Bell products, so I can see why you're sitting in the position you are now. I want to, I don't typically do this, but I want to read a little bit about you so our listeners get a better understanding of who you are before we start talking. Okay. So, like you said, you work for Bell. You're regional sales manager at Bell Textron.
Yes.
You were selected for Bell's prestigious sales development program, which takes place at the company's headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas. Prior to your position now, you served as a rescue helicopter pilot with the Japanese Coast Guard, where you spent 7 years logging over 1,500 hours. You were involved in a major incident, which we're going to get into. In addition to that, you served in the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force?
Defense Force, yeah. We don't call it Japanese Army.
Yeah. And you were part of the infantry group there. So you've got a pretty diverse background. And then on top of all that experience, you graduated from Utah State University with a bachelor's degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering. Hats off to you. I mean, the engineering curriculum at any level is very difficult. Both my boys were trying to encourage to go down the engineering route, and the math and science that's required to get through those programs successfully is very impressive. Hats off to you, sir.
Thank you.
Very, very cool. So yeah, getting back to your background, let's go into what I want to talk about kind of right off the bat. There was a major earthquake in Japan, March 11th of 2011. I think most people remember this earthquake because of the devastation that took place as a result of the earthquake. There was a major tsunami that followed. So on March 11th, 2011, a massive earthquake hit the northeastern coast of Japan. I remember seeing and hearing in the news a lot about this particular earthquake and the tsunami that followed, and then ultimately the Fukushima nuclear disaster that took place as a result of that. Can you talk about your experience in that earthquake in particular, what you were doing and what you remember as having taken place during that time?
On that time, I was belonged to the Japan Coast Guard as a rescue helicopter pilot, and then my helicopter was belonged to the vessel. I mean, the carry-on vessel, and my vessel's name is called the patrol vessel Sawyer, and the Sawyer is an icebreaker vessel. And I was in Hokkaido, it's the north part of Japan, which is like 500 miles away from the Tokyo. And when we had an earthquake, I was on the vessel, and that vessel was in a port, not on the sea. And then I experienced a big shake after the earthquake. And then right after that, my boss ordered me to fly as soon as possible and then look around the Hokkaido area, how the damage is that. And we flew from the vessel right after the earthquake, and then take a look around the port. Then I realized that it's Hokkaido, so it's far from the Tohoku area, main earthquake area. But I parked my car beside the vessel, in a port. But I could see the tsunami. 40 minutes later, the earthquake hit. Then my car was drifted by tsunami. I could see from my helicopter. And
wow.
Of course, we have a crew and we have mechanics on board and other radio men on board. Their car is also in the parking lot. And all those cars was drifted by tsunami. And we are like, oh my gosh, that's a huge earthquake. Then after that, I landed on the vessel. Then my vessel was dispatched to the main earthquake area, which is the Tohoku area. And then day after the earthquake, we arrived at the Tohoku area, and then we started search and rescue mission.
The power of that earthquake, it's listed as a 9.0. It says it was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan, and the fourth most powerful earthquake ever recorded in the world.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, being in proximity to that. Living in California, we do have earthquakes. The largest earthquake I remember experiencing was close to a 6.0, and I was a long ways from the epicenter of that earthquake. And I remember the chaos that ensued from that. So what, when you're on the ground after the earthquake has taken place, can you talk about what you saw and experienced as far as people's reaction to the earthquake?
Actually, when we arrived at the disaster area and they fly over the disaster area, I think a lot of house is already completely destroyed. So the regular people is gathering at the like elementary school as an evacuation center, at the like a temporary evacuation center. And also it was March, and the Tohoku area is really cold. It's like a temperature is, I'm sorry, I don't know the Fahrenheit, but they're around like below 10 degrees, 10 centigrade degrees. So it was cold, but they cannot use electricity, and they cannot use like gas as a heater. So that's why they made a big bonfire on the evacuation center. And I could see from my helicopter there, gathering on the front of the bonfire. So it was nightmare, And when I first saw the disaster area, I think I saw like there are no survivors in the coastline area. But actually, a little bit far from the coastline, we can see some survivors and who is gathering in the evacuation center.
Jimmy, let me ask you a question, and I'm fascinated every time I hear part of this story from you to learn more on it. Just to put it into context, so you're about 500 miles north of the epicenter, up like near the Russian border, I think maybe.
Yeah.
And that tsunami, even that far away, was within about 30 minutes, I think you said. Is that correct?
So actually, it's an hour and a half. Sorry, hour and a half. 30 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like 30 minutes, but I just touch on that. It's an hour and a half.
Do you know the height of the wave that came into the area that you were in?
In the Hokkaido area, it's not bad. It's like a 1.5 meter. It's not so high.
Something I read that was really impactful. It talks about the power of the earthquake and the tsunami. This is, adjacent to where the epicenter was. I pulled off an article, which I actually shared with Terry because it was so impactful to me, but it really kind of describes how this area is kind of, I want to say used to earthquakes, but they're prepared for earthquakes. And the power of this earthquake really kind of caught people off guard because it was so powerful. So I'm just going to read what I wrote, or read what I found in this article. There's a town that was twice destroyed by earthquakes and tsunamis. To prepare themselves for future earthquakes and tsunamis, this town built a 30-foot high wall that was nearly 2 miles long. And this wall, people thought, could never be breached by a tsunami as a result of an earthquake. So when this earthquake took place, people actually walked out onto this wall thinking that they would not be in danger at all. And they were actually swept away by the water that came from the ensuing tsunami. So I think it's important to bring up, just because, again, the folks in the area they're used to earthquakes. So it provides some perspective on the earthquake itself and the power that carried with it. So one thing in the article it said was the worst we had imagined has finally come to pass. What happened on March 11th was something much, much worse than that. I think people just couldn't imagine, and I can't really fathom the power of that earthquake and what people must have experienced during that time.
Now, some of the reason they know they had a big earthquake the past 100 years ago or something. So the summit of the mountain has a stone monument that says the last time the tsunami was arrived here. So the people is evacuating toward to the monument. Then they can survive. And then now you said a 20 feet height of the 20 feet height of the feet.
30 foot.
30
wall.
foot, right?
Yeah.
And now the government decided to build a new wall at that area, and now it's a 50 feet to highest height is at 75 feet.
Wow.
High.
Jeez.
And the length of the wall is at 230 nautical mile.
Wow.
The maximum, yeah.
That's a massive wall.
That's massive wall, yeah.
Jimmy, when you are up north and you feel the earthquake, you take off, you see your car flooded an hour and a half later from the tsunami. Do you know the severity of what has happened at that point, or are you still discovering what has happened and yet to see how?
Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems Hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com.
The Hokkaido area, my area, was the earthquake is not so bad. So people didn't evacuate from their residence. But so only damage of the tsunami at the Hokkaido, my area, that Kushiro area, was our car, the Coast Guard officer's car.
Oh.
So it is not bad at the Kushiro area. But the Tohoku area is the main disaster areas. 20,000 people died by the tsunami and the earthquake. And the 2,500 people were still missing.
Wow. That's wild. When you fly over that area now, is it still evident? Is there still evidence of the earthquake, or has most of that area been rebuilt?
Most of the area was rebuilt. Actually, 2 months ago, I went to the nuclear power plant, Fukushima nuclear power plant. But the surrounding area it's all rebuilt. I couldn't see any damage of the house and the buildings.
Yeah, wow.
But the reactor itself is still have the damage, but other residents or the houses are fine.
The area around Fukushima, the reactor itself, is that still isolated and off limits to folks?
Actually, right now in 2025, I think a 10 kilometer from the nuclear power plant was a restricted area. So there are the house, but no people inside the house. And also they have some a gate before the restricted area.
Okay.
So the people still evacuating from that house or move to other region.
Yeah.
Reading about the earthquake, there's a lot of talk of the early warning systems that are in place in Japan, and it sounds like most of that's through phone systems. Can you talk about that early warning system and how long people typically have notice in advance of an earthquake or an ensuing tsunami to evacuate or to prepare?
Yeah, actually, my understanding is that before the earthquake, a cell phone could receive a signal before the earthquake, but it's maybe 3 minutes before or something like that.
Okay.
Or 5 minutes before or something. But about tsunami, right after the earthquake, the TV broadcast and the radio, and all of the radio and also the cell phone warned that it's we received the information about we have a warning of the tsunami. So I think Japanese these kind of notification system is very good.
California has recently developed a similar system, and it's funny. This was about a month ago. My phone goes off, and I actually had no knowledge that the system was in place and live. So all of a sudden, I get an earthquake warning on my phone. I'm actually sitting in the chair that I'm talking to you in right now, and my dog's sitting next to me in our little dog bed. And I'm like, earthquake is imminent. So I'm like, holy cow. So I pick the dog up and I go just stand in the doorway. And I waited for like 2 minutes and nothing ever happened. I'm like, what is going on here? So I actually looked to see if there was an earthquake or not, or if this was just a test. And there had been an earthquake, but where we live was not affected. So, I'd rather be safe than sorry. But I felt like a dummy standing there in the door with my dog in my arm waiting for something to happen, So it's good technology, but I think there's a long ways to go, at least in Southern California, to make it an effective tool. Terry, any questions on the earthquake before we go back and dig into his background a little bit?
No, I'll make a comment, John. That earthquake you just mentioned, I was actually in Southern California and felt that one maybe a little bit more than you did, it sounds like. And I grew up there and experienced a couple of the larger ones. I'm going to really date myself here. 1971, the Sylmar earthquake when some of the freeways collapsed and whatnot. I think that one, I should have looked it up, but that one was like a 7 something. And Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, this earthquake was a 9.0, which is just unheard of. I can't imagine the devastation on that and on the coastline and the tsunami that follows.
Yeah, that damage is unimaginable. And I read, again, going back to what I read, at one point it said there was a stretch of land where they had found 20,000 bodies that had washed up, that had been swept out and in during the tsunami. Is that accurate?
Yep. And 90% of the victims was drifted by tsunami, swept away from tsunami.
Wow.
So other 10,000 is the house crashed or something like that. But the 90, maybe, yeah. 18,000 people were caused by tsunami.
The last question I'll ask has to do with the demographics surrounding the area where the earthquake took place. I know the earthquake actually took place offshore, but for the land nearest the epicenter, is that a densely populated area, or what does that area look like as far as housing and industry and whatnot?
Actually, it's not dense, dense area on the coastline. Of course, also, the coastline is the most of the coastline has a not big factory or not big residence, but we have 3 nuclear power plant around the day's coastline. The Fukushima is one of that. So yeah, that was our main concern when we hit the tsunami.
So the other 2 that were unaffected by the tsunami, were they damaged at all?
Okay. No, not at all. Yeah, it is fine.
Okay.
Of course, they stopped the operation right after the earthquake, but the cooling system is fine. The only Fukushima's problem is that their cooling system was damaged by tsunami and they cannot recover.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the mission that you ultimately responded to, is the cooling mission for the reactors there.
Yeah, cooling mission was conducted by the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force. So yeah.
Well, excited to dig into that, but before we get into the actual mission, let's go back in time, as Jack Shanley says often, which I like, and talk about your childhood, some of the early passions you had that kind of set you down the path of going into the military service and then ultimately becoming a pilot.
Okay.
So looking back from an early age, did you have a passion to fly? Did you want to be a pilot as a young child?
Yes. I really liked aircraft thing and the aerospace thing. So yeah, when I was a kid, I watched the Top Gun again and again. And my VHF couldn't see anymore because I watched it again and the tape was hard. Yeah.
You watched it enough times to break the tape?
Yeah. Break the tape, yeah. It was VHS, so it's not DVD. So
it's interesting that is impactful and something that you look to as a child, because it shows the power of that movie worldwide. A lot of folks in the U.S. talk about how it influenced their desire to be a pilot, but not very often do we have the conversations international and get that insight. That's something that motivated you as a child. So talk about your as a child going through school. Was your goal then to set yourself up educationally to where you could go into the military and become a pilot?
Oh, yes. So when I was 12 years old, I think I experienced a big earthquake. It's called a Hanshin earthquake. It was 1995. I think when I was 12 years old. And yeah, that one is 6,500 people died by the earthquake. And on that time, I was a Boy Scout. And I went to the disaster area for the, not search and rescue mission, but try to help the people, giving a rice bowl to the peoples at the elementary school, evacuation center. on that time, the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force helicopter, I think a UH-1, was fly into the evacuation center to bring some regular supply. That was the first time I saw the helicopter closely. Then that helicopter has a name. It said like a Japan Ground Self-Defense Force. Then I feel like, oh, that's cool. I want to be that helicopter pilot. That's my, motivation to be a helicopter pilot. So when I was 12, I start to dream to be dream to be a helicopter pilot.
That's awesome. Yeah, those little things that we experience growing up, those little moments, become so impactful and so motivating as you go. Terry, I'm curious, and I don't remember from our previous conversations, did you have a similar experience as a kid seeing a helicopter up close and saying, that's what I want to do?
John, I need to make up a story that says yes, and here it is, but I don't. I don't have that Maverick, Top Gun, the stunt pilot. I'll give you the scaled down version. I actually wanted to fly jets, and the Air Force and the Navy said no, and because they wanted college, I should say. And I was in the middle of getting kicked out of college. And so when I went to the Army and they didn't want college, I said, you know what? I've always loved helicopters. So it was actually that experience of failure, I guess you could say, that landed me in helicopters. But, in hindsight, it was, I'm obviously very happy about that. And but no, that's how I got started. Not very excited. I apologize.
It's all good. We'll work on a made up story later.
Thank you to our sponsor, SpectroLab. SpectroLab, a pioneer and world-leading supplier of high-intensity searchlights for all para-public operations. Visit www.spectrolab.com to learn more about our third-generation Night Sun series high-intensity searchlight. When reliability and performance is critical to your mission, count on SpectroLab Night Sun searchlights.
Jimmy, for you, so you identify at 12 years old, you see a helicopter come in, this is what I want to do. But you ultimately join the ground self-defense force.
Yes.
How did that, what was your motivation to do that? And how did that lead to the next thing that allowed you to actually become a pilot?
Actually, they have a pilot candidate exam after joining the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force. And I think my memory is that after becoming a sergeant, I can take the candidate exam. So I need to join the Japan self-defense or ground self-defense force. Then when I was a trainee, there were first 6 months we have training center, training school inside a Japan ground self-defense force, and all of the soldier trainees were trained by the same facility. And then after that, maybe, if you want to go for the tank, you go for the tank, or if you want to go for the infantry, you go to the infantry, or something like that. So on that time, I said I want to join the aviation squadron to be a mechanic. Then after 2 years later, when I promote to the sergeant, maybe I can take a pilot candidate, right? So I feel that's the best way to become the Army pilot. But my instructor said, do you know airborne infantry? Do you know airborne troop, divisions? I said, I know. Airborne is cool, jumping from the aircraft and, that's very elite, soldiers. And you can get the additional salary. And you can get the $50 per jump. And also maybe you can promote a little bit earlier than the other soldiers. Are you interested in? That my instructor said that. That's cool. Yeah, I will be that. Then of course we have like a selection exam or something, and I passed that, and I decided to join the airborne trooper. But after 2 years later, when I became the sergeant, I asked my boss to take a pilot candidate exam, but they said no. You have see your badge. You have already wing badge. You cannot take a double wing badge. What? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I missed that part of the briefing in the beginning.
Yeah, right. I know. Actually, when I was in the airborne division as an infantry trooper, we had a 911. It was 2001. And on that time, we had, after that event, Japan Self-Defense Force tried to have an exchange training with the U.S. Army because there are a lot of Japanese residents in the Iraqi area or Middle East area. So we plan to build a rescue team as a Japanese military. So we try to, we don't have much that kind of experience, such as dispatch to the foreign country to rescue to our country people. So that's why we had a lot of exchange training with the U.S. Army. And that time, and I speak English a little bit better than the other Japanese. So I talked to the Japanese, U.S. Army guys, and after the training area. Then my boss realized that, he can speak English. That's very helpful. Maybe he doesn't want me to leave from the airborne. That's the reason, I think.
You're valuable. Yeah. So you look back and the guy tells you get to jump out of an airplane, you get paid more, and you're going to become a pilot faster.
Yeah,
you jump on it, and then you go, hey, there's a exchange program in the U.S. Do you want to do that? Yeah. So you do that. All these doors are opening for you in a really cool way. But Terry, you've got a question that you've been wanting to ask or some insight.
It's interesting that, Jimmy, you mentioned the relations with the U.S. Army. If you go all the way back to the U.S. Army's recruiting, we actually do some of the same things. For me, when I told them, like you, I wanted to be a pilot, they told me I was better qualified to be a cook, and they tried to push that. And I mean, they were probably right, but I held my ground, and I'm glad you eventually held your ground, because obviously you not only excelled with airborne, it sounds like, but eventually became a pilot too, I know. So, yeah, it's and John, quick comment. We keep talking about Jimmy's English. So Jimmy is actually very good at English. He's my Japanese language instructor. He's a very good instructor. He's got a horrible student, but Jimmy, I think your English is great, is what I'm trying to say. So.
I'm so nervous right now, so that's why I cannot speak very well right now. But
you're doing great. Yeah, thank you for sharing all the insight. Again, go back to your time jumping. Was there a I don't want to say a mission or deployment, but was there something that you were involved in that particular mission set that you really enjoyed? An incident, a mission, or just the idea of doing it by itself?
Actually, I haven't experienced any actual mission when I was an airborne trooper. So basically we did a lot of training, the jumping training or heli training.
The idea, as cool as it sounds, jumping on an airplane, the idea to me is frightening. It's interesting that I don't like heights, yet I loved flying. And I loved helicopters, but I felt like that was a secured height. And I guess in some ways you're secured and that you've got your pack and your chute and all that. Did you have, and this is a silly question maybe, do you have somewhat of a fear of heights or not at all?
Not at all. Jump from the airplane, but the jump from the helicopter, I was scared. because like a jump from the airplane, it has an airspeed, right? So it was like feeling like a water slider. Cannot like I don't feel any like a negative G. But the jump from the helicopter, the airspeed is low. So my toe is, when I jumped from the helicopter, I could see my toe in the sky. It is upside down.
Yeah.
It is upside down. So I like helicopter, but I don't like jump from the helicopter.
How many jumps under your belt, Jimmy?
25 times, and include the 5 times night jump.
Very, very cool. Now, you get in after, you say, about 2 years. Was it 2 years before you did the exchange program to the United States?
Actually, not in the U.S. It was in the Japan.
Oh, okay.
So we have some like the U.S. base in Japan, and so I think some of the U.S. military guys came to Japan and had an exchange training. I mean, we had an U.S. Army instructor. I think he was a Green Bear or something.
Okay.
And, he told us about how to fight in the city area, urban area, or something like that.
Okay.
It's like called like a guerrilla. I forgot the name of in English, but it's not like it is different from the regular tactical training. It was like more specific to rescue our people from that like city area.
Okay.
I forgot the name. Yeah.
So how long after you started jumping did you get the opportunity to slide into a pilot training position?
Actually, I changed my job from the self-defense force to the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard has a pilot candidate course. And they don't ask any like aviation experience, but they have the like a pilot candidate exam. So I took the exam and I passed the pilot candidate exam, and then I joined the Coast Guard. I quit the Japan Self-Defense Force and I joined the Coast Guard.
Was that hard for you to leave the ground defense force and go to the Coast Guard, or were you happy to do that in pursuit of the pilot position?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that because
Okay.
my boss told me that I cannot get another wing badge. So
Okay. So what did that training look like in the Coast Guard, and how long did it take for you to get accepted into the pilot training side of things?
Actually, the first year was I joined the Japan Coast Guard school. And after a year, I moved to the flight school, the Coast Guard flight school. Then I started to learn about the aviation things. And it takes a year and a half to get to the commercial pilot license.
For the initial flight school, what was the aircraft you were using to fly?
Bell 206.
Okay. So from the very beginning, you're flying Bell aircraft. Terry, you have a question on board?
No, it's interesting, Jimmy. So you went into the Defense Force or the Army, and then got talked into going to airborne school as a paratrooper. What give you your other wings? So became a Coast Guard crew member. Sounds like on a vessel, and were persistent to get into flight school and a year and a half. What was that process like? Was it a competitive process to get into the Coast Guard flight school at that point?
Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details.
Yeah, to become the pilot candidate, I've heard that there are 250 people is taking to become a pilot candidate, and only 10 people were selected. And after flight school, we only have 8 people, 5 rotorcraft and 3 fixed wing pilot. I would say it is competitive.
Yeah, sounds very competitive. And how long is that initial flight training with the Coast Guard in the 206, it sounds like?
It's 1.5 year. Actual flight training was 1 year. And another 6 months was like studying. Right. I took a grant school.
So after a year and a half, you finish with your commercial rating? And
yes,
then
commercial. Only the single turbine engine.
Okay. And do you go to the fleet at that point in a rescue capacity, or how do you get assigned, and where do you go from there?
Actually, right after graduating Coast Guard flight school, I joined the actual air base. Well, my case was I belonged to the Nagoya areas air base. It's called the Ise Air Base, and then I worked as a co-pilot of the Bell 212 pilot with a Bell 212. And it's kind of like an OJT, like a on-the-job training session style training. And I got type rating for the Bell 212 after 6 months. Belong to the airbase.
And did that airbase have a particular mission, or was it a very broad mission scope?
A very broad mission. Sometimes we did a search and rescue mission, and sometimes we did a patrol for the patrol mission, and also sometimes it's a firefighting mission as well.
For the search and rescue operations, were those primarily operations taking place at sea, or did you guys do a lot of land-based search and rescue as well?
No, only for the sea area.
Okay,
not for the land.
I've always been impressed with those types of operations. You're flying in typically really bad situations, low visibility, high winds, high seas. Can you talk about your experience flying in those conditions?
Yeah, so we have a lot of typhoon in the summer season. So sometimes a wind speed is 30 knots or 40 knots, something like that. So yeah, it's really hard to calculate the fuel consumption because the ground speed is too low for the headwind, right? When we fly the 90 knot, but the headwind is 30 knot, it's 60 knot is the ground speed, right? But way back from the rescue area, it's going to be 120 knot. But there are no guarantee the same window is we have after the mission.
Right.
So sometimes it's really hard to decide, but we want to rescue more people. That's why the amount of the fuel should be the minimum of the mission, right? So yeah, that's a difficult point to think about before the mission. Yeah, the planning is a difficult part for the mission.
What did you enjoy, or what do you most enjoy about flying in the Coast Guard?
Yeah, flying as a Coast Guard pilot, I could see a lot of beautiful islands. We have a lot of islands in Japan. My area has over 200 small islands. It's there.
Wow.
And it is beautiful to see from the helicopter. And also, sometimes as a search and rescue mission, we start the search and rescue mission from the sunrise because nighttime it's not good for the search and rescue mission. So we start the first flight was with the sunrise time, and it is beautiful.
Yeah,
I can explain it much better. It's beautiful. So
yeah, I think that's one of the things that I enjoyed the most flying in Southern California. Every once in a while, we'd wind up on the coast. And you'd be flying the coast of Southern California, and you look over your partner, you're like, we're getting paid to do this. This is unreal.
Right.
It's a really cool position to be in. And I like that you had the ability to reflect on that and found beauty in the moment. Because sometimes you don't realize, the fortune that you've got until it's gone, So you found that beautiful and the thing that you like. So that's really cool. the next question, then I want to start talking about Fukushima. Aside from Fukushima, are there any memorable missions that you were part of? Any memorable search and rescue operations that come to mind as impactful or memorable for one reason or another?
It's time for your Heli Life giveaway buzzword. Listen up and remember this word because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's buzzword is deploy. Visit contest.verticalhelicast.com to enter the buzzword.
Is this has to be a search and rescue mission or
No, any mission or incident?
any missions? When I was in Hokkaido, my main mission was like a border patrol between the Russians international boundary, and sometimes we had a search and rescue mission beyond of the territory area. In that case, we need to notify the Russian government we're gonna get into that, territory area. To get the approval to enter the area from the Russia, we use the fax, not the email, not the phone call. We use the fax.
The old fax machine.
Yeah, the old fax machine. So sometimes that fax couldn't send to the Russian government properly. So on that, when I went to the rescue mission at the border, nearby the border line, I received a radio from the Russian Air Force. They said you are by our territory.
Oh.
So return to your territory immediately. No, we came here for the search and rescue mission. I said that. And then they said that Russian, I don't know it is pilot or traffic controller. I don't know. But they said, okay, let me check. He said that. And after that, no, we don't have any report. We're gonna send you the jet fighters.
Oh no.
After if you don't return back to your territory. And okay, fine. Then I fly back to the Japanese territory. So that sometimes happens.
Yeah. So the fax that you sent over wound up with some tire shop. Some guys looking at your fax. Saying, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It could be.
Really interesting that you have those types of boundaries in place. We in the United States have a southern and northern boundary, and I just had a conversation with the Two Bear Air folks, and they were saying for Canadian search and rescue operations, they have to also get approvals to enter Canadian territory, which isn't far from where they launch from. And often it takes so much time for the approvals that they can't even follow through with the search and rescue operations. They have to cancel it, even though that they could be the closest resource or asset to help people that might need that. But the fact that for you it's Russia, that's pretty interesting. Terry, any thoughts or insight on that before we start digging into the Fukushima part of the conversation?
Again, I'm just amazed at the similarities. I in Arizona, we had the southern border, Mexican border, and we had a flight, a rescue mission for a downed aircraft that was south of the border, and we knew it was south of the border, and we went through what we thought at the time was proper channels through Customs and Border Patrol. It was not a fax machine, but it was relayed through dispatch, and the rescue was done. We came back with the phone's ringing off the hook at every corner of the department, from the State Department, saying that we had violated, et cetera, et cetera. And, we have a policy now on international border crossings. So every policy has a story, and that one's mine.
Case law came from you. The Terry Miyauchi case law.
It's I got to tell you though, I can't compare to a Russia crossing border story.
Little different. Jimmy, for you, going back to Fukushima and what had taken place, can you talk a little bit more about the reactors, what had happened to the reactors, and what your role was as a pilot and what the role was of the Coast Guard in responding to that.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details.
Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com.
Thank you to our sponsor, SpectroLab. SpectroLab, a pioneer and world-leading supplier of high-intensity searchlights for all para-public operations. Visit www.spectrolab.com to learn more about our third-generation Night Sun series high-intensity searchlight. When reliability and performance is critical to your mission, count on SpectroLab Night Sun searchlights.
Thank you for joining us in this powerful episode of the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS and in partnership with Vertical Valor Magazine. Today, we heard incredible stories from Hajime Sagane, an experienced rescue helicopter pilot whose journey was shaped by witnessing a rescue as a child and who directly experienced the harrowing events of Japan's 2011 earthquake and tsunami. From the challenges of international rescue efforts and the complex operations during the Fukushima disaster, to the courage required to fly in difficult conditions, Jimmy's experiences highlight the resilience and dedication of public safety aviation professionals. These takeaways highlight the importance of continuous learning, preparedness, and innovation in our field, lessons that save lives and shape the future of aviation rescue operations.